The morning sun cast long shadows across the dusty streets of New Pittsburgh. A human colony that sat on the edge of known space like a lonely outpost in an ocean of Starzima Shao was playing. In her front yard, when the ships appeared overhead, the 8-year-old girl looked up from her collection of smooth stones, her dark hair falling across her face as massive alien vessels descended through the orange-tinted atmosphere. Her mother called from the doorway, voice tight with concern, "Emma, come inside right now." The child gathered her stones quickly. Sensing the fear in her mother's words, the Zeltharian ships settled onto the main plaza with a low hum that made the ground vibrate. Commander Beshtkar emerged from the lead vessel, his tall frame covered in ceremonial armor that gleamed purple and silver in the alien sunlight. His species looked almost reptilian to human eyes, with scales that shifted colors based on mood and large eyes that saw deeper into the spectrum than human vision could manage. Behind him marched a dozen soldiers, their weapons held in a ceremonial position that still managed to look threatening. The colonial administrator, Peter Wong, hurried to greet them, his face showing the strain of trying to maintain diplomatic relations with a species that considered humans little more than talented primitives. "We weren't expecting an inspection today," Wong said, his voice carefully neutral. The Zeltharian commander looked down at the human with barely concealed contempt. "The Concordat does not require your expectations," Administrator Veshkar replied in perfect English, though his translator gave the words a metallic edge. "We are here to enforce Compliance Directive 7743, which your species has been informed of through proper channels." Wong's stomach dropped. He knew the directive: all juvenile members of client species were to be registered and cataloged for potential service to the Concordat. Human government had been negotiating for months to exempt their children from this humiliating requirement. But apparently those negotiations had failed. "Commander, surely we can discuss this," Wong began. But Veshkar raised a clawed hand. "Discussion time has ended," the commander said coldly. "All families will present their juvenile members for registration immediately, or face consequences throughout the colony." Families received the emergency broadcast. Sira Shao grabbed her daughter as Marcus, her husband, checked the lock on their door. His military training from his years in the Earth Defense Force told him this situation could turn bad quickly. "We need to get to the community center," Sarah said, her voice shaking. "Maybe if we comply." "They have no right," Marcus interrupted, his jaw clenched. "Emma is our daughter, not some asset to be cataloged." But they had no choice. The alternative was worse. Families began gathering in the plaza, children clinging to their parents as Zeltharian soldiers moved among them with handheld scanners. Emma held her mother's hand tightly, watching the tall aliens with wide eyes. Commander Veshkar moved through the crowd with mechanical efficiency, his aide recording data as each family presented their documentation. When he reached the Zhao family, Marcus handed over their papers with barely controlled anger. Veshkar's eyes scanned the documents, and something shifted in his expression. His scales darkened slightly, a sign of satisfaction that Marcus recognized from the cultural briefings all colonists received. "These documents are incomplete," the commander announced loudly enough for nearby families to hear. "The genetic certification is outdated by Concordat standards." Marcus felt his heart hammering. "Those documents were filed properly, according to the schedule we were given. Concordat standards supersede your local procedures." Veshkar cut him off. His scales were now showing hints of red, which the briefings had said indicated authority being asserted. "This juvenile must be taken for proper evaluation." Sarah's grip on Emma tightened. "No," she said simply. "Absolutely not." The plaza went quiet. Other families stopped their processing and watched as the confrontation developed. Veshitar studied the human woman with what might have been curiosity. "You refuse a direct Concordat order?" "We refuse to hand over our daughter for evaluation based on a technicality," Marcus said, stepping forward to stand beside his wife. "Contact your superior officers. Contact our government. But you're not taking her." The Zeltharian commander's scales shifted through several colors arranged for consideration. Then, settling on a deep blue that the briefings had warned meant a decision had been made. You are teaching me that humans require lessons in obedience. Veshkar said quietly, then he raised his voice too. Addressed the gathered crowd. Let this family serve as an example of what happens when concordat authority is challenged. He gestured to his soldiers. Take the juvenile into custody. What happened next occurred so fast that most witnesses would later struggle to describe it accurately to Zeltharian soldiers. Move toward. Ema Marcus shoved one back. His military reflexes taking over. Sarah screamed and tried to pull Emma behind her. The crowd surged forward. Other colonists shouting protests. Administrator Wang was yelling something about diplomatic immunity. But Veshkar had made his decision. One soldier used a harmonic stunner on Marcus, dropping him to his knees. Another pulled Emma from her mother's arms as Sarah fought with desperate strength that took 3 soldiers to restrain. May was crying, reaching back for her parents, her small voice calling for her mommy and daddy as the soldiers carried her toward the ship. The entire colony watched in horror as the child was taken aboard the Zeltharian vessel. Marcus, recovering from the stunner, tried to stand but fell. His wife was screaming Emma's name. Held back by alien soldiers who seemed unmoved by her distress, Wang was on his communicator, frantically calling the Colonial Defense Offensive's car. Surveyed the chaos with satisfaction. These humans needed to understand their place in the galactic order. They were newcomers, barely capable of faster-than-light travel, and they needed to learn that the Concordat's word was law. The juvenile will be evaluated according to proper procedures. He announced to the crowd, she will be returned when processing is complete. Assuming she meets standards, the implicit threat hung in the air. Marcus finally made it to his feet. His eyes locked on Veshkar with an intensity that made even the commander pause. You just made the biggest mistake of your life, Marcus said quietly, his voice carrying a weight that seemed at odds with humanity's position as a minor species. Veshkar turned away dismissively as ships lifted off, Emma's face visible for a moment in one of the viewports before the vessels accelerated upward and vanished into the sky. The colony plaza erupted in chaos as families scattered, some running to check on the Zhao family, others rushing to their homes in fear that they might be next. Administrator Wang was already sending priority messages off-world, his hands shaking as he typed. Sarah had collapsed to her knees, her husband holding her as they both stared at the empty sky where their daughter had disappeared. None of them knew yet what Commander Veshkar couldn't possibly have known was at the moment Emma had been taken aboard that ship. An automated beacon had activated WAS, built into every human child's identification chip, a failsafe that the Concordat had never detected during their scans. The beacon transmitted a single code on a frequency that human ships monitored constantly. Protocol read the galaxy was about to learn why humanity protected its children with such absolute conviction, and Commander Veshkar was about to discover that some species didn't make threats, they made promises. The emergency beacon from New Pittsburgh reached the nearest human naval base in exactly 4 minutes. Commander Rebecca Torres was drinking coffee in her office when every alarm in the facility started screaming. Simultaneously, she dropped her mug and ran to the operations center, where her staff was already mobilizing with practiced efficiency. Talk to me, she demanded. Reaching her command station, protocol red activation from New Pittsburgh Colony, her operations officer reported. His face pale, confirmed child seizure by Zeltharian forces. Suspect identified as Commander Veshkar, child identified as Emma Zhao. Age 8. Torres felt ice run down her spine. Protocol red. Every human in uniform knew what it meant, had drilled for it, had hoped they'd never actually see it. Activated sound general quarters. She ordered, get me Admiral Chen immediately, and activate the Cascade. The Cascade was humanity's emergency response network within seconds. The protocol red alert was bouncing from base to base, station to station, ship to ship, spreading through human-controlled space like wildfire on Mars. Admiral Sarah Chen was reviewing supply reports when her personal communicator chimed with the priority override tone she'd hoped never to hear. Grabbed it and read the message twice, her experienced military mind already running through responses even as her heart pounded with controlled fury. Get me the Secretary General. She ordered her aide and prepped my ship for immediate departure. "Full combat load, Admiral? The Third Fleet isn't her aide," I said. "Full combat load." Chen interrupted, "And send the Ghost Protocol activation to all units." Her aide's eyes widened. Ghost Protocol meant activating ships that officially didn't exist. Vessels that had been hiding in deep space for exactly this kind of emergency on Earth and Geneva. The Human Systems Alliance Emergency Council was convening in a secure chamber designed to withstand. Orbital Bombard Minsecree General Amara Okonkwo took her seat at the head of the table. Surrounded by the leaders of humanity's various factions and governments for once, there was no debate. No political maneuvering. A child had been taken status. She said simply. Defense Minister Zhang pulled up a holographic display. Protocol read confirmed. Child seized by Zeltharian Concordat forces approximately 23 minutes ago. He reported Third Fleet is mobilizing. Ghost Protocol assets are activating, and diplomatic channels are being opened. How long until we can bring Emma home? Okonkwo asked. Depends on Concordat's response to our demands. Zhang replied, if they cooperate immediately, possibly within hours, and if they don't. Zhang's expression hardened. Then we bring her home by force. And the Concordat learns why we've been building fleets instead of pleasure yachts. Okonkwo nodded. Open diplomatic channels. Send them our terms. Return Emma Xiao, unharmed within 6 hours. Or face total war. One of the council members. Ambassador Li spoke up carefully. Secretary General, the Concordat has hundreds of member species and thousands of worlds. We're talking about a conflict that could. A child was taken from her parents. Okonkwo, cut her off. We don't negotiate on this. We don't compromise on this. Humanity has exactly one absolute rule, and the Concordat just broke it. The room fell silent. Everyone there knew the history. Knew why Protocol Red existed. Humanity had learned hard lessons during its early expansion into space. There had been an incident. Decades ago. When human colonists had tried to negotiate with pirates who had taken children hostage, the negotiations had failed. The children had died. Never again. Humanity had decided never again would they hesitate. Never again would they count the cost. Touch a human child. And the entire species would respond with everything they had. Ambassador Park, humanity's representative to the Concordat, received his instructions within minutes and immediately requested an emergency meeting with the Zeltharian High Council. The council convened with visible annoyance. These humans were becoming tiresome with their constant complaints about sovereignty, and Wrights Park stood before the assembled aliens, representatives of dozens of species who considered themselves the galaxy's rightful rulers. The Human Systems Alliance demands the immediate return of Emma Xiao, he announced without preamble. You have 6 hours to comply. Counselor Thren, a senior Zeltharian who had served for 3 centuries, made a gesture that his species used to indicate mild amusement. Ambassador, your government seems to misunderstand the situation. Thren said. Commander Veshkar was enforcing legitimate Concordat law. Your colony failed to maintain proper documentation. Return the child, Park repeated, or face total war. The council chamber filled with the various sounds different species made when they found something. Funica Slora, Thren's scales shifted through colors that indicated he was trying to be patient with a slow student. Ambassador Park, we appreciate that human emotions run strong regarding offspring, Thren said, but threats are unbecoming. The Concordat has observed your military capabilities, and while respectable for such a young species, they hardly justify such dramatic language. Park pulled out a data tablet and activated it. The holographic display showed a star map of human space. These are our known fleet positions, he said. The display showed perhaps 300 ships scattered across a dozen systems. In these, Park continued, his fingers swiping across the tablet, are our actual fleet positions. The display transformed suddenly. Thousands of new markers appeared. Ships that had been hiding in deep space, in nebulas. In the dark spaces between stars, the council chamber went quiet. You've been watching us for decades, Park said calmly. You've been measuring our capabilities, assessing our threat level, deciding how much respect to show us. What you didn't realize is that we've been watching you too. He changed the display again. It showed Zeltharian military installations, Fleet positions, defense networks. We know where every one of your major assets is located. Park continued. We know your defense capabilities, your response times, your supply lines. We've been preparing for the possibility that first contact might not go well, Counselor Thren's scales had shifted to a pale color that indicated shock. You've been planning for war. He asked. We've been planning for survival. Park corrected. And now you've crossed the one line we will not allow anyone to cross. Return Emma Zhao within 6 hours. Or discover exactly what humanity is capable of when you threaten our children. The Zeltharian High Council went into emergency session after. Park left. Counselor Thren called up his own military advisors. Demanding to know if the human claims could be accurate, the advisors ran scans, checked intelligence reports, and went increasingly pale as they confirmed what Park had shown them. They've been hiding fleet assets all along. One advisor reported our estimates of their military strength were off by a factor of 10, possibly more. Another added these stealth technologies are beyond what we've seen from them. Thren made a decision. Contact Commander Veshkar. He ordered tell him to prepare the human juvenile for return, but there was a problem. Veshkar wasn't responding to communications. The commander, it seemed, had decided to take his ship to a remote outpost, perhaps thinking he could avoid the political fallout of his actions. 6-hour deadline was approaching fast on the bridge of her flagship. The UDFS Titan, Admiral Chen, watched the countdown timer with cold fury around her. The Third Fleet had assembled 300 warships that officially existed, and another 500 that had just decloaked from their hiding positions. Admiral, we're receiving reports from all sectors. Our communications officer announced. Ghost Protocol assets are fully activated. We have operational command of approximately 3,000 vessels. Chen nodded. 3,000 ships. Humanity had spent decades building them, hiding them, preparing for a day they hoped would never come. Status on Emma Zhao. Still aboard Commander Veshkar's vessel, which has gone dark and is believed to be heading for Concordat Outpost 7. The countdown reached 0. Chen took a deep breath and opened a channel to all human military forces. This is Admiral Chen, she said. Protocol Red is now active. All units proceed to designated targets. Rules of engagement are as follows. Disable all Concordat military assets. Avoid civilian casualties. And find Emma Zhao. She paused and makes sure the galaxy understands. Humanity protects its own across 100 light-years of space. Human ships that had been hiding in the dark suddenly came to life. The Zeltharian Concordat was about to learn a very hard lesson. Some species made threats, humans made promises. The first wave of human ships appeared over the Concordat administrative capital, like ghosts materializing from nothing. One moment, the Zeltharian Home Defense Fleet was conducting routine patrols. The next, their sensors were screaming warnings as hundreds of contacts appeared on scopes that had shown empty space seconds before Admiral Chen's Third Fleet had arrived on the surface. Counselor Thren was in an emergency meeting when the alarms began. Report. He demanded, his scales flashing through colors of alarm. Human fleet detected in orbit. A military liaison announced estimate 900 vessels. Classification ranging from destroyers to dreadnoughts. Impossible, Thren said. Their entire navy barely numbers 300 ships. That was our estimate based on observed forces. The liaison interrupted. These vessels are broadcasting human identification codes, but were not in our registry. They're coming out of stealth on the Titan's bridge. Admiral Chen opened a broadcast channel to the planet below. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Defense Force. She said calmly, the Human Systems Alliance demands the immediate return of Emma Zhao. You have 1 hour to produce her unharmed, or we will systematically dismantle every military asset within 100 light years of New Pittsburgh. Thren tried to respond, tried to negotiate, but Chen cut the channel. Negotiation time was over around the Concordat capital system. Human ships began moving with practiced precision. I've drilled for this scenario 1,000 times. Had planned every move, every target. These Eltharian defense platforms were first human missiles, using warheads that generated electromagnetic pulses. struck each platform simultaneously. The platforms didn't explode, they simply went dark. Their crews alive, but their systems completely dead. The Concordat defense fleet tried to respond, launching their ships toward the human formation. What happened next shocked every military analyst watching. The human ships didn't engage in traditional combat maneuvers. Instead, they moved in perfect coordination, like a school of fish, their formation flowing around Zeltharian vessels, while point defense systems intercepted every incoming shot. Then, human ships fired precision strikes, hit engine assemblies, weapon systems, communication arrays. Tharian ships went dead in space. Life support still functioning, crews unharmed, but vessels completely disabled. Admiral Chen watched the battle unfold with grim satisfaction. Casualty report. She asked Zero. Her operations officer replied, all Concordat vessels disabled. Number confirmed deaths on either side. It was exactly as planned. Humanity didn't want to exterminate the Zeltharians. They wanted to send a message across Concordat space. Similar scenes were playing out at the military shipyards of Thelmer. 4. A human strike force appeared and disabled every vessel under construction at the Naval Academy on Zelthor Prime. Human Marines landed and politely but firmly informed the cadets that their training was suspended until further notice at the Concordat's primary communication relay. Human ships took control and began broadcasting a simple message on all frequencies. Turn Emma Shao. The speed and coordination of the human assault was terrifying. The Zeltharians had fought wars before, had conquered dozens of species, but they'd never encountered anything like this. These humans weren't just attacking, they were systematically dismantling the Concordat's military infrastructure with surgical precision on the Zeltharian High Council. Panic was setting in. How are they doing this? One counselor demanded. They're everywhere at once. A military analyst pulled up tactical displays, showing human fleet positions across multiple systems. They've been planning this for decades. The analyst said quietly, every ship knows exactly where to go, exactly what to target. This isn't a military operation thrown together in hours. This is the execution of a plan they've been refining for years. Counselor Thren felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries, for not fear for himself, but fear of what his species had unleashed. What are their casualties? He asked. Ours, I mean. How many Zeltharians have they killed? The analyst checked his data and frowned. 17 injured, 0 dead. He reported they're using non-lethal weapons almost exclusively. Every ship they disable, they're leaving the crews alive. Thren's scale shifted to a color indicating confusion. They invade our space, disable our fleets, and take care not to kill our people. It seems they want us to understand their capabilities, not their brutality. The analyst said. Another counselor spoke up. We need to find Commander Veshkar now. If we can return the child, we've been trying. Thren interrupted. He's not responding. He thinks he can hide at Outpost 7 on the human command channel. Admiral Chen was receiving updates from all fronts. Admiral. Sector 7 reports all Concordat military assets neutralized. One report came in. Sector 12 confirms successful interdiction of reinforcement fleets. Came another. No human casualties. Concordat military effectiveness reduced to approximately 15% and dropping. Chen nodded. Checking her tactical displays, the human forces were executing the operation flawlessly, but the objective wasn't complete until Emma was safe. Any word on Veshkar's position? She asked, tracking his quantum signature. We believe he's heading for the outer colonies. Possibly Outpost 7. Chen opened a channel to one of her fastest ships, Commander Okafor. This is Admiral Chen on the bridge of the destroyer, UDFS Relentless. Commander James Okafor straightened. Admiral. Go ahead, I'm detaching you to pursue Commander Veshkar, Chen said. Bring Emma home. Understood. Admiral Okafor replied. Rules of engagement? Disable his ship, retrieve the child. If Veshkar surrenders, take him prisoner. If he doesn't, Chen paused, her voice hardening. Make sure he understands what happens to people who take human children. The Relentless broke from the main fleet, its advanced drives pushing it to speeds that left even the fastest Zeltharian vessels behind back on Zelthor Prime. The High Council had finally managed to establish contact with several of their outlying military commanders. Reports were all the same. Human forces appearing without warning, disabling defenses with precision strikes, and then broadcasting that same message. Return Emma Zhao, one commander, Admiral Kresh. appeared on the council's view screen with his scales showing colors of desperation. Counselors. I've lost 70% of my fleet, he reported, not destroyed, disabled. The humans are taking apart our military-like mechanics, deconstructing a machine. Can you mount a defense? Threnas Kedkresh made a sound that translated roughly as bitter laughter. Counselor. I don't think you understand. The humans aren't trying to destroy us. If they were, we'd already be dead. He pulled up a tactical display. Look at their strike patterns. They're hitting every weapons system, every engine, every sensor array. But they're avoiding crew quarters, life support, medical bays. They're fighting a war where they win by proving they could kill us, but choose not to. The implications settled over the council like a heavy weight. They're showing us mercy. 1. Counselor said quietly, they're showing us what they're capable of. Thren corrected in making sure we survive to remember the lesson. He turned to his communications officer. Send a message on all frequencies. The Zeltharian Concordat accepts human terms. We will locate Commander Veshkar and return the child Emma Zhao unharmed. But even as the message went out, Thren knew it might be too late. The humans weren't waiting for negotiations. They were coming for their child themselves in the darkness between stars. Commander Veshkar sat in his command chair, watching his sensors with growing dread. Had received the High Council's messages, had seen the reports of human fleets appearing across Concordat space. At first, he'd thought it impossible, some kind of human propaganda or deception, but then his own long-range sensors had picked up the quantum signatures of thousands of ships, moving with purpose and coordination that spoke of decades of planning. Taken one human child, one juvenile from a minor colony, and somehow he'd triggered a response that was bringing the entire Concordat to its knees. Vetkar looked at the holding cell monitor, where Emma Zhao sat curled in a corner, her face streaked with dried tears. She looked so small, so harmless. How could one child be worth all this? His sensors chirped a warning. A single human destroyer had just appeared on his scopes, impossibly fast, impossibly close. The Relentless had found him. Commander Okafor's voice came over the communication channel, speaking in clear Zeltharian. Commander Veshkar. This is Commander James Okafor of the UDFS Relentless. You are ordered to power down your weapons and prepare to return. Emma Zhao. Veshkar stared at his tactical display. One human ship against his heavy cruiser. Odds should have been in his favor, but he'd seen the reports. He knew what these human ships could do. His hand hesitated over the weapon controls. Pride warred with survival instinct in the end. Pride. One human vessel. You are in Concordat space without authorization, Veshkar replied. Withdraw, or I will fire. There was a pause. Then Okafor's voice came back. Harder now, Commander? You have one chance. Return the child, and you and your crew will be treated as prisoners of war under human conventions. Veshkar's claws tightened on the control. I am a Concordat officer, he said. I do not surrender to primitives. He pressed the firing stud. It was the last mistake he would make as a free being. The moment Commander Veshkar fired his weapons, the Relentless responded with a precision that seemed almost lazy in its confidence. The Zeltharian plasma bolts, weapons that could crack a moon's surface, dissipated against the human destroyer shields like rain against a window. Then the Relentless fired a single shot, the magnetic accelerator round, traveling at a significant fraction of light speed, punched through the Zeltharian cruiser's engine assembly with surgical precision. The massive ship shuddered and went dark, emergency lights flickering on as backup systems struggled to compensate. Direct hit on engine core. The Relentless's tactical officer reported enemy vessel disabled, life support stable. No casualties detected. Commander Okafor nodded. Prep boarding teams. He ordered and tell them, we're bringing a child home. I want our best people on this within minutes. Human boarding pods attached to the Zeltharian cruiser's hull. Cutting torches burned through the outer airlock with practiced efficiency, and human marines poured into the ship. Veshkar watched on his monitor as the humans moved through his vessel with terrifying speed. His crew tried to mount a defense, but it was like watching children fight trained warriors. The humans used non-lethal weapons, almost exclusively stun rounds, sonic disruptors, binding nets. They moved in perfect coordination, covering each other, calling out positions. clearing rooms with an efficiency that spoke of countless hours of training. What shocked Veshkar most was their restraint. One of his crew members, a young engineering officer, panicked and charged at a human marine with a maintenance tool. The marine simply stepped aside and used a grappling technique to pin the Zeltharian without causing injury. Easy there, the marine said calmly. Nobody needs to get hurt today. The boarding team reached the bridge within 8 minutes. Teskar stood from his command chair, his scales showing colors of defiance mixed with fear. I am Commander Veshkar of the Zeltharian Concordat, he announced. I demand to be treated according to... We know who you are, the lead marine. A woman with sergeant stripes on her armor interrupted. And we know what you did. Where is Emma Zhao? Veshkar gestured toward the detention level. The juvenile is in holding cell 3. Unharmed, as per Concordat regulations. Take me there, the sergeant ordered now. 2 Marines kept weapons trained on Veshkar. While the rest of the team followed him to the detention level, Commander noticed how the humans moved always. Watching corners. Always covering each other. Never leaving themselves vulnerable. These weren't amateurs playing at soldier. These were professionals who had clearly fought real wars when they reached holding cell 3. The sergeant pushed past Veshkar and opened the door. Ma Xiao looked up from her corner, her eyes red from crying. Her small body curled into a defensive position. The change in the Marines was immediate. Cold efficiency became gentle concern. The sergeant knelt down, making herself smaller, less threatening. Hey there, Emma, she said softly. My name is Sergeant Maria Santos. Your mom and dad sent us to bring you home? Emma stared at the Marine, not quite believing Mommy. She whispered, Is she okay? She's fine, sweetie, Santos replied. She's waiting for you. She wants you to know she loves you very much, and she's going to hug you so hard when we get back. Emma started crying again. But this time with relief, she ran to Santos, caught her and held her close. I've got you, Santos murmured. You're safe now. Nobody's going to hurt you. The other Marines formed a protective circle around them, and Veshkar saw something in their body language that made his scales pale. These humans weren't just following orders, they were personally invested in this child's safety. They would die too. Protector Santos stood, still holding Emma, and turned to Veshkar. Commander Veshkar, you are under arrest for the kidnapping of a human child. She said formally, you will be held pending trial under human judicial authority. Veshkar wanted to protest, wanted to claim Concordat immunity, but the words died in his throat. Seeing what the humans had done to his fleet, to the entire Concordat military, this wasn't a negotiation. What happens now? He asked quietly. Now, we go home. Santos replied simply. The journey back to New Pittsburgh took 6 hours. Spent most of it with the human crew, who treated her like she was made of glass. They gave her food, let her sleep in the captain's own quarters, and rotated watch duty to make sure she was never alone. Commander Okafor even sat with her for an hour, answering her questions about the stars they were passing. Veshkar was held in a secure but comfortable cell like his own detention facilities. The humans provided him with proper food, water, and even entertainment if he wanted. Ida guard checked on him regularly. Always polite, always professional. It was humiliating. Expected brutality, expected revenge. Instead, he was being treated exactly as the humans had promised, a prisoner of war, with dignity and respect. Made his own actions feel even more shameful in retrospect. The Relentless entered New Pittsburgh's system. They found it had changed dramatically. A human battle group had taken up permanent orbit, 6 cruisers and a dozen destroyers, making it clear that this colony was now under direct military protection on the surface. The entire colony had gathered at the landing. Pad Marcus and Sarah Shao stood at the front, holding each other's hands so tightly their knuckles were wheat. Administrator Wang had tried to organize some kind of formal ceremony, but the Zhaos had refused. They just wanted their daughter back. The Relentless landed with a gentle hiss of hydraulics. The boarding ramp lowered and Emma appeared, holding Sergeant Santos's hand for a moment. Everything was still then. Sarah screamed her daughter's name and ran forward. Marcus was right behind her. They met Emma at the bottom of the ramp, scooping her up in their arms, Holding her like they would never let go, the entire colony erupted in cheers. People were crying, hugging each other, some falling to their knees in relief. Commander Okafor watched from the top of the ramp with a slight smile. Mission accomplished, he said quietly to Santos. Good work. Sergeant Santos nodded, but her eyes were on the Shao family. That's what we do this for, she said. That's why we train. Why we plan. Why we build all those ships. So families don't get torn apart later that evening. After Emma had been checked by doctors, fed her favorite meal, and tucked into her own bed with both parents watching over her, Marcus received a message that Commander Veshkar had been transferred to the colony's detention facility, would be held there until a trial could be arranged. Marcus stood from his chair, careful not to wake Emma, and kissed his sleeping daughter's forehead. I'll be back soon, he whispered to Sarashe. Nodded. Understanding, Marcus made his way to the detention facility, where guards let him through after confirming his identity. Veshkar stood when Marcus entered his cell. The Zeltharian scales were showing colors of shame and resignation. I suppose you've come for revenge, Veshkar said. Marcus studied him for a long moment. No. He finally said, I came to make sure you understand what you did. I enforced Concordat law. Veshkar began. You took my daughter from me. Marcus interrupted. You made her cry, made her scared. You put her in a cell like she was a criminal? Veshkar's scales darkened. I thought, he started, then stopped. What had he thought? That humans wouldn't care? That one child didn't matter? Do you have children, Commander? Marcus Isked. Veshkar nodded slowly to offspring. Grown now, then you should understand, Marcus said, what it means when someone threatens them. What you would do to keep them safe. The Zeltharian looked at the human with something approaching comprehension. Your species would have gone to war, he said. Would have faced the entire Concordat for one child? Marcus finished. Yes. For any child, every child. He moved closer to the cell's force field. You're going to be tried under human law. Marcus continued. You'll have a fair trial. Lawyers, if you want them, and you'll be treated humanely throughout the process. When you're sentenced, you'll serve your time in conditions that respect your dignity. Veshkar's confusion was evident. Why? He asked. Because that's who we are, Marcus replied. We don't torture prisoners. We don't execute captives. We believe in justice, not revenge. He paused. But you need to understand something, Commander. What happened to your Concordat these past hours? That's what happens when you threaten our children. We showed restraint today, showed mercy. But don't ever mistake that for weakness. Marcus turned to leave, then looked back. My daughter is safe, he said. That's all that matters to me. You'll answer for what you did, but you'll live. And someday you'll go home. He started walking toward the exit. Learn from this. Commander, Marcus called back. Tell your people. Tell anyone who'll listen. Humanity doesn't want to be your enemy. But harm our children, and you'll find we have no limits to what we'll do to protect them. Veshkar stood alone in his cell long after. Marcus left through the small window. He could see New Pittsburgh's light somewhere out there. A human child was sleeping safely in her own bed, and across the galaxy, an entire species had been reminded that some things were worth any price. The formal negotiations began 3 days after Emma Shao returned home. The location was neutral space, aboard a human diplomatic vessel that the Zeltharians had initially protested was too militaristic until they realized it was actually one of humanity's civilian ships. The fact that human civilian vessels looked like warships to other species said something about how seriously humans took the possibility of conflict. Admiral Sarah Chen represented the human military secret. Eta General Okonkwo represented the civilian government. Cross the table sat Counselor Thren and a delegation of Zeltharian officials, their scales showing colors that ranged from subdued gray to nervous orange. Let us begin with the immediate concerns, Okonkwo said, her voice professional but carrying an edge that made clear she was not in a negotiating mood. The Human Systems Alliance demands the following. First, complete cessation of all hostile actions. Second, formal apology to the Shao family and the colony of New Pittsburgh. Third, reparations to be determined. Fourth, a new treaty recognizing human sovereignty and the absolute inviolability of human children under any circumstances, Thren's scales shifted through several colors before settling on a pale blue that indicated acceptance. The Concordat agrees to these terms, he said. Quietly, one of his aides started to object. But Thren raised a hand. We agree, he repeated. Firmly, Okonkwo nodded additionally. Commander Veshkar will be tried under human law for kidnapping. Depending on the verdict, he may serve his sentence in human custody or be returned to you afterward. That is acceptable. Thren replied, another aide. A younger Zeltharian with scales that showed agitation spoke up. Counselor, surely we should discuss the terms, negotiate some kind of no, Thren. Cut him off. We are in no position to negotiate. The humans have demonstrated their capabilities, and they have shown remarkable restraint in using them. He turned to Admiral Chen. My aide raises a question that I believe needs to be addressed. Though perhaps not as negotiation, Thren said carefully, your species responded to this incident with overwhelming force. You deployed fleets we did not know existed, disabled our military across dozens of systems, and did all of this within hours. Chen nodded. We did why? Thren asked simply, why build such military might? Why hide it? And why, despite having the power to destroy us completely, did you show such restraint? Chen leaned back in her chair, considering her words carefully to understand that. Counselor, you need to understand human history, she began. We're a young species compared to most in this galaxy. We've only had faster-than-light travel for a few generations. She activated a holographic display showing Earth, but before we reached the stars, we spent thousands of years fighting each other, Chen continued. We had wars that killed millions, weapons that could destroy our entire planet, and we came very close to annihilating ourselves several times. The Zeltharian delegation watched the display with rapt attention. We learned some hard lessons from those conflicts. Chen said we learned that strength alone doesn't bring security. We learned that sometimes you need to be ready for war to preserve peace. We learned that protecting the innocent, especially children, is the most important duty any society can have. She changed the display to show human colony ships leaving Earth when we expanded into space. We hoped for peaceful contact with other species. Chen continued, but we prepared for the possibility that the galaxy might not be as friendly as we wished. So we built ships in secret, trained fleets in dark space, developed contingency plans for every scenario we could imagine, including war with the Concordat. Thren said it wasn't a question, including war with everyone. Okonkwo corrected gently, not because we wanted it, but because we couldn't risk being unprepared if it came. She pulled up records of humanity's early colonial period 20 years ago. There was an incident. She said quietly, human colonists on a frontier world called Haven's Reach were attacked by pirates. The pirates took 17 children hostage and demanded supplies, ships, weapons. The room went silent. Our government tried to negotiate, Okonkwo continued, her voice tight with old pain. We tried to be reasonable, tried to give them what they wanted without escalating the situation. We thought we could solve it peacefully. She paused, and even the Zeltharians could see the emotion in her eyes. The pirates killed all 17 children. Anyway, she finished, they killed them and escaped before our forces could respond. Thren's scales went completely white. The Zeltharian equivalent of horror after Haven's Reach. Humanity made a collective decision, Chen said. Never again would we hesitate when children were threatened. Never again would we count the cost or worry about political consequences. She looked directly at Thren. That's why we responded the way we did to Commander Veshkar's actions. The moment Emma Zhao was taken, every human in uniform knew exactly what to do. Because we've drilled for it, planned for it, prepared ourselves mentally and emotionally to do whatever it takes, but you showed restraint. Thren said you could have killed us all. We could have, Admiral Chen agreed. And if you had harmed Emma, if you had hurt her or refused to return her, we would have. But you didn't. And your people were just following orders they thought were legitimate. She leaned forward. Counselor, humanity doesn't want to be the galaxy's destroyer. We want to be your partners, your friends if possible. But we will not compromise on the safety of our children, not for anything. Not for anyone. Okonkwo took over. The treaty we're proposing isn't just about this incident. She said it's about establishing clear boundaries so nothing like this ever happens again. You need to understand what lines cannot be crossed, we understand now. Thren said quietly. One of the human aides brought up the formal treaty documents. They were surprisingly simple: mutual recognition of sovereignty, agreement on territorial boundaries, clear protocols for diplomatic incidents, and a specific clause that made the abduction or harm of children from either species a crime that both governments would treat with absolute seriousness. There's one more thing, Okonkwo said. We want to establish cultural exchange programs, joint scientific ventures, trade agreements. We want to turn this incident into an opportunity for our species to actually know each other. Thren's scales shifted to a color, indicating surprise. After what we did, you want cooperation? After what happened, we want to make sure it never happens again, Okonkwo replied. The best way to do that is through understanding. If our peoples work together, trade together, learn together, then maybe the next time there's a problem, we can solve it without fleets and weapons. The negotiations continued for another week. The final treaty included everything humanity had demanded, plus frameworks for cooperation that both sides hoped would prevent future conflicts on the day of the signing. Representatives from both species gathered in the neutral station's main conference hall. News crews from dozens of species were present. Broadcasting the event across the galaxy, Counselor Thren and Secretary General Okonkwo signed the treaty together. Their signatures appearing on the holographic document today marks a new beginning between our peoples. Okonkwo said for the cameras, "We hope this treaty will serve as a model for how species can resolve conflicts and build mutual understanding." Thren nodded. The Zeltharian Concordat acknowledges the errors made in this incident. He said carefully, "We extend our formal apology to Emma Shao, her family, and all humanity. We pledge to honor this treaty and work toward a peaceful future back on New Pittsburgh." The Shao family watched the signing ceremony on their view screen, sat between her parents. Safe and content, she was too young to fully understand the galactic politics, but she knew something important was happening. "Are the aliens going to come take me again?" she asked, looking up at her father. Marcus hugged her close. "No, sweetheart," he said firmly. "Never again. The whole galaxy knows. Now nobody touches our children." Sarah kissed Emma's forehead, "And if anyone ever tries," she added softly, "your whole species will come to bring you home." Emma considered this. "Because I'm important?" She asked. "Because you're loved," Marcus replied. "Every single human child is loved. And we protect what we love." In the weeks that followed, the galaxy adjusted to its new understanding of humanity. The species that had dismissed humans as primitive newcomers suddenly looked at them with respect and a bit of healthy fear. The hidden fleets didn't return to hiding. Instead, humanity kept them visible, a reminder of their capabilities. But alongside the warships, human trade vessels began moving through the galaxy, carrying goods and establishing relationships. Scientists from Earth reached out to colleagues on Zelthar Prime to discuss joint research projects. Artists arranged cultural exchanges. Children from both species began learning about each other through educational programs. Commander Veshkar was tried and convicted of kidnapping. He received a sentence of 15 years in a human correctional facility. Conditions were far better than he'd expected: humane treatment, educational opportunities, even the chance for eventual parole with good behavior during his trial. He'd been asked if he had anything to say. He'd stood before the court and spoken directly to the Zhao family. "I believed I was enforcing legitimate law," he'd said. "I believed your child was simply another juvenile to be catalogued. I did not understand what she meant to you. What any human child means to your species." He'd paused, his scales showing genuine remorse.